All right, we're taping this on a Tuesday afternoon. This is a guy who got ready for training camp by losing at least 25 to 30 pounds. Oh, no, that was Joel Embiid. But it is Rob Mahoney. How are you, Rob?
I'm good. Joel and I get confused very often, so I'll forgive the error just this once.
25 to 30 pounds. What's the exact number for Joel?
3.5.
We'll see. He said he's still working on it. He doesn't care. We're going to talk about this when we do training camp storylines. So you covered this on your pod before. I covered it on my pod, but the big Towns trade, which is not official yet. And I think when it happened, everybody has their reactions. I certainly had mine. Now we've had a chance for it to sink in for a few days. Has anything changed in your head since this trade happened?
I think I keep coming back to, and maybe this is my personal risk aversion talking, and we can get into that if you want to, but I find it harder putting myself in the place of a contending team to think, wouldn't it be cool if we just dramatically reconfigure everything that we do? And I say that for both sides of this deal. I think the Wolves were in pretty good position to contend in the West. I thought the Knicks with Mikal Bridges were sitting in a pretty favorable position in the East, at least to make another deep run. And so for both of those teams to look at their situations, and granted there are flaws there, but say, we want to shake this up dramatically. I just don't know that I would have gotten there coming into the season. Maybe at the deadline, maybe deeper in once you saw a little bit more of what you've got. But I don't know that I was ready to make a move this big on either side.
Yeah, the more distance I got from it, it just seems to me it's about flexibility, where you have a Minnesota team that just could not sustain the financial model of whatever that team was going to be, right? Yeah. And they felt like we actually have an out to get two players and contend this year and have some flexibility going forward. And we're not trapped to those next 3 Towns years where our model just goes sideways. I get it. And I probably am now leaning toward liking the trade a little bit more for them because there's a world where Randall comes in and goes great. From the Knicks standpoint, the more I stare at it, it just seems like we need a center. Let's push all the chips in. Yep. We're getting the best guy in the trade. And most important, and I wish I had made this point harder on Saturday, we just don't want to give Randall that extension. Yes. And we think it's going to be a problem that we're not giving the extension. I think I talked about chemistry stuff on Saturday, and I wish I'd hit the extension part harder because going into a season where he's going to have to sacrifice and then also not know what he's getting paid.
Yeah.
And then also not know what his role is. And then also not know if he's going to finish every game. And there might be situations where he's just on the bench for the last 5 minutes and be in a situation where it's him and the Nova Knicks, so everybody in the Knicks loves. I think they just sniffed it out and didn't like where that was headed. And at least with Towns, throw out this year. So it's a 3-year commitment after this. It's a guy they all knew. It's a CAA guy. It's a Kentucky guy. And they're just making the bet. But there's no way they felt 100% on it. I don't think.
I don't think either team can feel 100%. But I want to focus on the Randall part of this. Because you said you can see the vision of how this could go well for Minnesota. If everything works right for Randall. But everything you just said about his extension also applies to their financial situation. Either they are in bed with Julius Randle for the foreseeable future, or he is a very short-term piece of this team. And I think that's where I get caught up on the cat element is the finances were what they were. And it was always going to be more likely that they would trade him at some point or trade some big financial piece at some point than keep this whole group together. The writing was kind of on the wall. It was just a matter of timing and who. But if all you're getting back for Cat is a first and Dante DiVincenzo, a player we all like, and maybe or maybe not the future of Julius Randle at a price point you may or may not actually like, why are we doing that? Why are we doing that when we have a ready-made conference finals worthy team? Maybe it doesn't get all the way there this year, but certainly worthy of competing at that level.
It's a great question. And I think maybe they look at it from their end and say, if this starts to slide backwards, what are our outs? And ironically, they were in the same position that the Knicks are in now. The glass half empty version of this, what are our outs? And for Minnesota, they would have had no outs at that point, right? Yeah. There's a Gobert extension that they probably would have passed on, and maybe they'll pass on it anyway. We have no chance to trade Towns now. This is our one chance to get 2 guys plus a little more flexibility, and maybe that's gone. I also think they could probably quietly shop him around a little bit and have at least a little bit of a sense for what these guys are worth. But it speaks to another NBA piece of this, which are these high-priced, non-alpha superstars, not
Yeah.
maybe all NBA, but not quite. Bradley Beal, Zach LaVine, but it feels like there's more of those. Because the Ingram thing, I think, was the most fascinating one to me all summer. Nobody wanted him. And I did Ringer 100, which you did too. You did the votes. Ingram's somewhere between, you could put him as high 40s, you could put him low 60s, but he's one of the best, probably 60 players in the league. And he was at 36 million, I think, or 35 million for one more year. And everybody was like, pass.
Yeah. And another extension debacle too. Another guy who the Pelicans just aren't looking at that future and saying, we see how he fits with what we have and with the direction that we're going. And the problem with Brandon Ingram is I think it's hard for a lot of teams to envision exactly what that is because of the class of player he is and because of what his strengths are, which is somebody who is ultimately a lot more comfortable with the ball in his hands, but has not shown that he can elevate a team into great standing and great postseason success with that kind of responsibility.
Right. And the Warriors looked at it and said, no thanks.
Yes.
When they desperately wanted to make a move and pursued Lauri Markkanen all summer. Towns is more interesting because I think Towns is somebody, first of all, Towns is good. I mean, I had him in my top 35. I'm sure you did too. He's somewhere in the 25, 35 range. I think I had him like 32. He's somebody you can really talk yourself into as a shooting stretch five. Same way the Celtics talked themselves into Porzingis. But the price for Porzingis was ironically a little similar to the Towns price. And Minnesota got more for Towns, but same thing where it's like, man, that's all they got for Towns, but super expensive guy. He's missed a bunch of games last 5 years. There's real questions about the self-awareness with him, which I think are going to be tested to the gills in New York City.
Certainly.
It was interesting to hear all the different takes on that too, because I think everybody likes him. But I think everybody has the same concerns about him in New York City. And there's two types of people that seem to just fail in New York City. And one of those two types is I am not self-aware at all. And I just say things that then become dissected and ridiculed for 2 straight days. And maybe I shouldn't have said that.
Sure.
He was always a maybe I shouldn't have said that guy. And now he's going in the worst city to be a maybe I shouldn't have said that guy.
That part of it I think is going to be tough. Even just kind of figuring out how he fits and finds his place in things basketball-wise will be interesting for him. Because he is a guy who, by the nature of his skill set, and this is true of any kind of stretch big, you have to pick your spots very carefully. And I thought that's where the Porzingis story panned out so successfully for Boston, is they knew exactly these are the matchups where you put him at the elbow and he goes to work. These are the situations where he's just spacing. This is when he could get away with rolling. All that was very carefully laid out. It's a tricky thing to manage. And I think this is where the Nova Knicks thing could potentially be more than a cute story. The Knicks have a lot that they need to incorporate now with Cat and Bridges and a reshuffled bench. And before we forget, OG Anunoby has played like 30 games with the Knicks.
Right.
If some of these guys already have the baked-in familiarity of going through a postseason run together, and even Bridges, who you're bringing in, knows how to play with Brunson and Hart, there's a continuity there of a kind, even if it's a little bit older in terms of the history. Maybe that makes all this a little bit easier in terms of, okay, Bridges is a guy you don't necessarily have to worry about funneling a certain kind of touch to or certain kind of opportunity to. All of our attention coming into camp can be, how do we make Karl-Anthony Towns comfortable in the way that we play? And how do we maximize what he does? Because there's no question they need a creator like him. I just wonder if he can be the kind of creator who isn't committing 2.5 offensive fouls a night, who isn't taking a couple shots that he shouldn't take every so often, like killing the momentum of a Jalen Brunson run.
What was your take on Towns defensively? I'm looking up his basketball reference as we're talking. What was your take on his defensive abilities and deficiencies before Gobert showed up in Minnesota?
Did not seem super tenable as a full-time 5 to me.
Yeah.
But if he was going to be tenable at any point, it would probably be with someone like OG Anunoby next to him and probably be with another wing defender like Mikal Bridges next to him. So as far as setting him up for some kind of defensive success, I think this is as close as you're going to get. And there's also the possibility when Mitchell Robinson comes back, you could play Towns at the 4 in the way that he played next to Gobert. That there's some momentum there and a style there that could potentially work, and his shooting is certainly good enough. I just don't think if Towns is your 5, you're going to be an elite defensive team. It's more
even
about,
with all the other guys they have.
I think it's a matter of like managing it. It's like you're going to be kind of very solid, probably like the back part of the top 10. Good defensive team. They have the rebounding, they have the versatility, they have the length. I think what's most important for them is they do match up better with the Celtics. And if that is the most important matchup in the field, then I think Towns does a lot for you there in terms of something to leverage and also a style that I think fits that matchup a little better.
Yeah, I was thinking about, I was already moving ahead to like April, May.
Of course.
When we start when the playoffs really shrinks to just matchups and attacking. And teams were already attacking Brunson, right? It's like, how can we wear him down? How can we just put him and stuff? And now they're going to be attacking him with Towns' guy. And Anunoby and Bridges and Josh Hart, as good as those guys are defensively, I kind of feel like they're not going to be involved in a lot of playoff basketball because it's going to be all about who's Towns guarding, bring him over, set the screen on Brunson's guy, and let's go to town on those two guys, and everybody else can kind of stay over there. And, teams tried to do that to Minnesota last year with Towns to pretty solid success. At the same time, I was impressed by what he did against Jokic. Now, granted, he had Naz Reid and he had Gobert, but that was about as good as I've seen him do. So when Minnesota was shitty, he was basically between 17 and 18 shots a game. And then the last 2 years, as Ant kind of ascended, he was at 15 a game. And then we get to the playoffs last year and this year, that's about 14 a game. And I do wonder on the Knicks, how many shots are there for him? Is he going to be the second option? Is it going to be Brunson as the first option and then just a hodgepodge of other guys? And are they just going to tell him, here's what we want, dude. Punish smaller guys in the post, hit some threes, play defense, move your feet. And that's what we want. And grab 10, 11 rebounds. That's all we want. You're here. We wanted you here. We traded for you. You're here for the next 3 years. We're not going to trade you. You're a guy. But we need your help here, here, and here. And just do this. Don't worry about scoring 25 points a game anymore. Those days are over. And whether he accepts that or not.
I think we have reason to suspect that he will. For all of Cat's faults, he has been pretty willing to try new things. And when push has come to shove, it has almost always been incumbent on him. Like, he's the one moving to the 4. He is the one spacing out to begin with. He is the one who has to take on a different kind of role. I'm not saying he's been universally successful, but look, stars are creatures of habit. And there are a lot of guys in the league who categorically will not change their substitution pattern because they're so superstitious that, like, I need to come in at the 8-minute mark or else my whole rhythm is off. And I give Cat a lot of credit for the fact that he's been willing to try lots of stuff for the Wolves. And for a winning team, and that's absolutely what the Knicks are, a team with a proven track record, with winning habits, with guys who are likable and high energy and you want to play well for, I think he's going to want to try to be on his best behavior with that stuff.
It's funny how the Hartenstein, how that became a sliding doors for this season, right?
It really did.
It made OKC the prohibitive favorite, like at least for the regular season. I don't know about the playoffs, but I think if you're betting who's going to have the best record in the league this season, they have to be the first team mentioned. But then it also opens the door for the Knicks to now have to go, shit, what do we do? And you start looking at the available centers and they just weren't there. So you're occasionally a cynical guy.
Occasionally. I
You're
try
on the
to fight
Prestige
it.
TV pod a lot. You're doing anti-hero shows and weird shows and dark shows. A lot of dark shows in the Prestige pod. The Towns Prestige TV season 3, Towns goes to New York, I think would start out great. And then by episode 3, maybe there's a couple red herrings and uh-ohs, and maybe there's a district attorney having a heart attack at the end of episode 5.
Oh, definitely.
And it's definitely a roller coaster ride, is my point. The Karl-Anthony Towns in New York City. Ultimately, I'm rooting for him the same way I would root for one of those shows, even though he's on the Knicks, they're competing against the Celtics. But I've always kind of liked him. And I think one of the recurring themes with his career is people being frustrated by him because they want to like him. And it's like, dude, why'd you say that? Come on. Why'd you foul that guy 40 feet from the basket? It's like, come on, dude. Just can you stop being you? Can you just reach your potential? And I don't know if that's his destiny or not as a player.
I actually want the opposite. I want him to be him. Because I feel like when he steps in it and says the wrong thing and it's the why did you say that kind of moment, it's usually because he's trying to be somebody he's not. And he's speaking with like a bluster and a bravado that doesn't always seem like it's coming that naturally to him. New York is not the easiest place to be comfortable in your own skin. No. I hope that he can find that peace somehow. I hope he can find whatever his corner of the city is, make it his own, stay sequestered in your neighborhood, get to know your bodega. I think there's a version of this that can work. And like you, I really hope to see it.
Yeah, Boston, New York, Philly, all the East Coast cities are similar in that authenticity always is going to win.
Yeah.
In any of those cities, right? They're always going to root for people who just really give a shit and stay true to themselves. And the guys who always seem to get in trouble over and over again in any of those cities are the people that talk out of their ass, pretend they're something they're not, take some sort of false bravado over the actual accomplishments on the court. And it's weird because Embiid is probably the only one who hasn't been victim of that because Philly just loves Embiid. And sometimes he'll say stuff or do stuff, and you're like, I can't believe the Sixers fans are putting up with this, but they like the guy, and that's
now
it.
You're just trying to agitate. Now the season hasn't even started,
well,
and you're
next
just lighting little fires.
Agitate.
Okay.
So Towns he played 16 playoff games for his entire career until last year when he also played 16 playoff games, 32 playoff games total for him. And last year he was in a really sweet spot with Minnesota where Edwards was the go-to guy. The defense was kind of the meal ticket. And basically anything he did was a bonus. Do you feel like that's the same in New York, or do you think they need more than that?
I think they need a little bit more, but I also think that the overall team is set up better for him to do more and to press a little bit. The spacing is going to be a little cleaner. The fact that the rest of the team is so perimeter oriented, I think is going to open up room for him to even just like attack the offensive glass, something that Tom Thibodeau historically loves his teams doing. And so there's going to be a chance for him to exert his impact on the game in a different way. And frankly, for a Cat team, I think that makes more sense than what we had with the Wolves, where Anthony Edwards, based on the spacing that Minnesota was working with, had to do a lot of like really high level processing in order to try to get over the hump. And he's just not quite there yet. And maybe he will be next time we see him in the playoffs. The Knicks are different because Jalen Brunson does have to do some of that, but all the spacing and stuff that we're talking about allows Josh Hart to bust out for a meaningful game, allows Isaiah Hartenstein to bust out for a meaningful game. You put one of the most skilled bigs in the league in that position in CAD, I don't see why he can't have a huge impact on that offense.
Yeah, it's weird because now I'm putting my Celtic hat on and trying to figure out if I'm more or less scared of them after this trade.
Yeah.
And I think the answer is more because they really didn't have a center, right? The center thing, losing Hartenstein, never knowing when Mitchell Robinson was going to come back. The guys that were available, that might be available in January, February, it just seemed like that was going to sink them. And they were basically going to have to do the small ball, Tibbs, everybody playing 42 minutes, weird lineups, and try to sneak their way through. And now the team makes a little more sense. But man, if it doesn't work out, I know the Knicks fans don't want to hear it. They're like, well, whole point of making a trade? And like, you could have said that about Porzingis. And it's like, yeah, but Porzingis was making 30 and Towns is in the high 50s. One last thing on Minnesota, and then we'll wrap this part up. As a league pass team, I think they're going to be one of the most interesting teams in the first 6 weeks of the season to see how all the pieces fit together, right?
Yeah.
They're going to pass better because Randall was, kind of a sneaky good passer, and he would get assists and create shots for other people, and Towns was never a create shots for anybody else guy. DiVincenzo's way more fun to play with, I think, than any swing they had. So you have that stuff. So then the Dillingham coming off the bench just has this crazy kind of heat check ball running through him. I can carry the offense for 15 minutes. There's just a lot of stuff going on, and I'm really interested to see how it works. What happens to Gobert coming out of the Olympics, where he was basically just shoved to the side and treated like he was, Luke Cornett. I mean, Luke Cornett probably played more, but I think it's going to be a fun team to watch. And I have no idea. You could tell me they're going to be awesome, or you could tell me we'll be doing What's Wrong with the Wolves segments 3 weeks in, and I'm prepared for any scenario with that, right?
I think it's going to be pretty comfortably in between. I don't think they're going to be awesome out of the gate. There's just too much they need to sort through first, but they're too talented to be bad. I don't think they're going to flounder by any means. I actually do think the Randall thing you mentioned about his playmaking is going to be really nice for them, especially in some of the smaller groups, or, like when he and Dante DiVincenzo, for example, are out there together. Randall is much more of a drive and spray out kind of playmaker. And I will say this about Cat. He's not a great passer. The one thing he did well was set up Rudy, kind of like big to big lobs.
Yeah.
That's never really been Randall's playmaking style. And so there's going to be a bit of an adjustment there. But I think the trade-off as far as a team that is positioning a rookie to basically be their backup point guard right now, although I guess Anthony Edwards is probably kind of the backup point guard, but Rob Dillingham is going to be an important part of this team. And if you can ease him in with the training wheels of having a playmaking four in the mix, that's going to help. I'm just having visions of Ant trying to go to work and Julius Randle spotting up on the weak side and teams going, yes, we will trust you to take that shot as many times as you would like to take it.
Yeah.
And the Wolves are going to walk into that. And when that guy isn't Cat shooting 40% from three, there are nights where that really, really hurts.
And then you have the night where McDaniels doesn't make anything. You've Gobert out there who can't make anything. So then you have 3 of the 4 Ant teammates have the ability to shoot. But I do like that they can throw a little more flexibility out with lineups now than you really felt it during the Dallas series. You know, like once Ant couldn't look like a reasonable facsimile of MJ anymore, all of a sudden that went sideways. So your final recommendation is thumbs up for the Knicks, thumbs tilting a little down for the T-Wolves?
Yeah.
That's where you landed?
I think that's fair. Like, would I have made this move if I were the Knicks? I think given the talent play, you probably have to. But it does make me at least a little bit nervous. I think you bet on Karl and you see if you can make it work. The Wolves, I don't think I would have swung this big right now.
What prestige TV show do you think the Knicks are going to be this year? What would you go with?
The plot line you laid out sounded very like New York Ozark to me, which is, I think, a much darker outcome than the Knicks would like.
But New York Ozark.
They're looking bright and sunny. You know, like I think it's going to be good vibes in New York for the most part this year. I think it's going to be super fun. Teams that are that talented, yeah, there's a little bit of hand wringing, but there's so many new toys to play with in an engaging and exciting way that maybe prestige isn't the right zone. Maybe it's more of like an Abbott Elementary kind of a situation.
Oh, I like it. Well, I wonder, this happened to Porzingis last year when, and there were a lot of seeds planted the year before in Washington, so it wasn't too shocking, but he comes in and it's just the best version of him. As you said before, they're using him in all the right ways. They're not leaning on him too much, but they're leaning on him a lot. Whatever he's giving them, that's always the best lineup they had. And it was really cool. It was this guy who used to be the unicorn, and then he was injury prone, and then kind of found his spot on this team and became this beloved Celtic. And there's a world where that happens to Towns. Like, I'm definitely not ruling it out. It's the most fascinating transaction we had in the offseason, even though we have a million transactions. Towns and the Knicks is the best one.
Are you prepared for the outcome where a playoff series is going to be determined by KP versus Towns? And the Eastern Conference universe is going to ride on that
way.
It
really does. It feels like that. It's going to be round 2 or round 3. It's going to happen. All right. Training camp storylines are different than season storylines. Season storylines is like, who's going to win the MVP? Can the Celtics go back to back? Training camp storylines are tinged
It's tinged
and twinged in a little bit of fiction, a little bit of theater, a little bit of hyperbole.
Yeah.
A little bit of you're at the farmer's market and people are trying to like, hey, you got to try these apples are the best apples you're ever going to eat. And you're like,
I saw you get them off the truck.
Yeah,
I know this
look like all the other apples. You got to try these cheese crisps. Like, do I? So off season, I'll just give you my favorite and then you rip off all the ones you have. My favorite is the Clippers trying to navigate this Kawhi Leonard knee thing.
We got to do it.
Just glass half full. It's going good. My knee, he's basically, if you read between the lines, he's saying, my knee's never going to be the same. But I think I'm going to be able to manage it, guys. So come to the Intuit Dome because I'll be playing there. Probably not, but I'll probably be playing there all year. And I'll be 40% as good as I used to be. But it'll be great. Come on down in the Intuit Dome. I just could not believe this is like year 7 of this. So that jumped out to be the most. You agree?
It is also on my list. I think Clippers bleak watch in general has to be on here. Kawhi on Media Day said he does plan to be available for opening night.
Oh, thank you.
He also said he never plans to miss games.
Right.
So he does often miss games. I don't know that I'm like betting hard that he's going to be available, or maybe he's there for opening night for very political financial reasons and then quickly recedes into some scheduled rest after that. It could be that kind of situation. I think the problem is it's not just Kawhi. This is a team that also lost Paul George, that I don't know if you caught this media day quote. James Harden's takeaway from watching Luka in the NBA Finals was that actually maybe he should dominate the ball more. That the offense is definitely going to involve a lot of him.
Luka basically laid the blueprint that I believed in the 2010s, and that could be us. That was James Harden.
How is it that Luka Doncic, whatever your priors are and your view of the world, if you watch Luka Doncic, he will in some way confirm it. I don't know what effect he has on people that makes him do this, but it really works that way.
Harden, everyone else is like, this is too much of a burden for Luka. They probably need a little bit more. He's wearing down, and Harden's like, I like this. This is great. But by the way, he played with Kyrie and then demanded a trade out of there. So I don't. Maybe it's hard to replicate. Yeah, it's the guy I shared season tickets with. We're excited to go into it though. This is I think year 6 of. Do you want to go tonight? ... Is Kawhi playing? Not sure. Let me look. That's over a half decade now with Kawhi. And at this point, he was in the 2011 draft? Right? God, this is year 15?
That sounds right.
Year 14 or 15 for him? I can't imagine. Whose knees were like, yeah, I had a lot of trouble with my knees. And then in year 15 of my career, it really turned around. My knees became great.
Well, I mean, the bionic technology might be there. I don't know.
Maybe. It's brutal. So I actually think they knew Kawhi's knees were fucked, and that's why they didn't want to give Paul George all that money.
Could be.
I think that's, especially when you think like he goes to the Olympic team, they kind of gently send him packing in a couple days. And it's like, yeah, Kawhi's decided to drop out. They fucking pushed his ass out. Like they were like, we need 12 guys and you're not in shape to play and we don't think you're going to be healthy. And I just don't think it's going to change. It's sad. But at the same time, he won a title and had made a ton of money and had a really interesting career, and he's going to be a Hall of Famer. You look at somebody like Derrick Rose, who had that knee injury at the worst possible time in his career, missed 2 postseasons, was never really the same. Like Kawhi was better than that, but it's still a bummer. We just never really got to see it for an extended stretch with the Clippers. It would be half of a season, 3/4 of a season. It just never happened.
Yeah. Plenty of things have gone wrong for him, but the biggest possible things went right. And so it's hard to really frown on a career like that. I think where I'm stuck with the Clippers right now is Kawhi is going to be whatever sort of wild card health-wise he's going to be. James Harden is going to be, I would suspect, more or less the player we saw last year, give or take, the usage will go up, as he has alluded to. The other part of it that worries me is some of the other chatter out of Media Day for them was Norm Powell was talking about how losing Paul George actually might be an addition by subtraction situation because look at all these capable guys we have who can step into bigger roles. I don't know that I personally would be puffing out my chest at Terrence Mann and Derek Jones taking on the mantle of your offense. 2 players I like, but I don't like that.
Right.
And there's going to be a lot of that sort of thing for the Clippers this year.
Yeah. Well, what do you think their odds are to make the playoffs on FanDuel? Clippers make the playoffs? Yes. What are those odds?
Oh my God. I don't even think they're going to be
not a huge odds.
I don't even think they're going to be a play-in team.
Well, FanDuel says plus 205 for yes, minus 250 for no.
Yeah.
Which is brutal. Like the Rockets are even odds, yes.
Yes.
Right.
Rockets are going to be a better team than the Clippers.
Golden State are even odds, yes. You go through all these teams, the consensus is after who's the worst team in the West? Portland
for sure.
They're in play for that second worst spot if Kawhi's not playing healthy. And then on top of it, which this will be the first of many times I mentioned this on a podcast, OKC has a right to swap first round picks with them in 2025, which could be an absolute all-time, even by Clippers standards, dagger if that ends up being a top 3 pick. All right, what other training camp stuff do you have?
So you talked about OKC being the prohibitive favorite regular season-wise. I agree.
Yeah.
I think we're all very high on the Thunder. That said, how sure are we that the Grizzlies could not steal the top seed in the West?
I like this.
Something about the photos coming out of Media Day of seeing Ja and Bane and Jackson and Smart and Zach Edey, the confidence of like, we're going to pose all these guys together. We trust that it's going to work. It really stoked my sense of like, this team is going to kill in the regular season. And I don't even know if they're going to solve all their half-court issues. I'm not even saying anything about Ja as like a guy who can crack playoff-level defenses. I just think the West this year could be the kind of conference where you win 55 games and you get first.
Right.
Just because it's so deep. And the Grizzlies have done that before. I think they could do it again right now.
Marcus Smart watching the Celtics win the title, chip on his shoulder.
There you
John
go.
Morant trying to reclaim his best under 30 American superstar title from Anthony Edwards.
A lot of chips.
Triple J didn't make the Olympic team. Brandon Clark coming back from injury. Zach Edey, nobody believed in me. I'm actually the best player of this draft. I like it. There's a lot of stuff. There's some interesting Ja quotes. So I don't think Ja.
There always are.
We talked about self-awareness with Towns earlier. Like, I wouldn't say Ja had like a plethora of self-awareness last year with some of the interviews and quotes he did, but this year it did seem like he really just wanted to take back his spot in the league hierarchy, and he had been a little humbled by the last 2 years. Now, they could be telling him what to say, but it at least passed some imaginary first test for me. We'll see how this goes. If he's on a player podcast 2 weeks from now saying something crazy, we'll see. But I like Verno on the mismatch with Jacoby. Shout out to those guys. I had a fun time listening to that. Verno, first of all, Verno said Ja was going to be first team All-NBA, and then paused.
Ooh. Yep.
And was like, okay. And then he unwound it, and he said, I think he's going to be on one of the first 2 teams All-NBA. And I was like, whoa, that's aggressive. Then I started thinking about it. Like, he probably will be if he's played 75 games and looks like Ja again, he probably will be one of the 4 guards.
Yeah.
Right? It's Mitchell, it's Edwards. Who else is in the Curry?
Well, it's also positionless too, so he could wiggle his way in any number of ways.
My Dow will never be positionless, Rob.
Well, what position does Luka Doncic play? I'm still unclear on that.
I don't know what position. What is he? I guess wing.
One thing as far as the All NBA stuff goes, and also like I think as you're thinking about the guard hierarchy specifically, we just talked about Cat's impact on the Knicks. I think Jalen Brunson's numbers will come down a little bit, and his overall driving impact may not be seen in like quite the way it was at the peak during, say, the postseason, because he's going to have more help. He's going to have a lot more going on around him in a way where it's not so definitively Jalen Brunson carrying this thing.
Yeah.
I think that favors guys like Ja, where if he has a monster season, there's an opportunity for him to, overtake where Steph would end up in this kind of pecking order if the Warriors are kind of, underwhelm again. Overtake Brunson potentially, although I think Jalen Brunson's a better player right now. But all the narrative stuff could end up tilting in his direction, weirdly enough, even though he was the one who kind of blew up and then got hurt, the momentum of this larger Grizzlies run in the first place.
30-1 for MVP for Ja. It's pretty intriguing.
MVP
We're not allowed to bet
strong
on it because we have votes, but
yes,
you have to be a top 3 seed, which I think both of us think Memphis could be.
Definitely.
You'd have to be the best player in a really good for 6 straight months team, which I think he qualifies for. I was surprised those odds were where they were. I think there's a lot of amnesia for how good he was. The other one I was looking at him was the points per game title, which he was 48-1.
Who's the favorite for that?
The favorite is Luka, plus 165. But it's probably around, 30, 31 range. I don't know if Ja can get that high, but that team's going to be pretty good. I'm with you on Memphis. The odds the over-under for them has been shooting up. It was too low to begin with, and now it feels like everybody's looking at it the same way. Minnesota has this weird trade. The number 2 seed's available. What do you have for your next storyline?
Which of Orlando, Indiana, and Cleveland can hit another gear? Right? Kind of the comfortable middle of the Eastern Conference playoff picture. I think we can say Celtics, Knicks, Sixers, maybe the Bucks with an asterisk are sort of the top of the East right now.
Is the asterisk 37 years old and coming off multiple arthroscopic surgeries? I don't know. I haven't talked to asterisk yet.
We're gonna come back. I think asterisk may be in the room here with us.
Okay.
But as far as these teams go, it's so tempting because they're all in that 47-48 win range last season to think, why couldn't the Magic get to 50? Why couldn't the Cavs jump to 50 wins next season? Is there any team in this group you feel very confident in taking whatever the next step is?
Well, Sacramento is a good example of this last year, where what did they win, 48? But a lot of things went right for that to happen.
Yes.
And then the league got a little better last year, and all of a sudden they dropped, even though they were kind of the same team. Now they had to make this trade. I look at Orlando as the upside team out of those because I still feel like they have a trade to make. I think there's somebody for them to go and get who can give them a little scoring and take a little bit of a load off of those other two. Would be where my head's at. You mentioned the guards thing. I forgot to mention this because I was thinking about Halliburton.
Sure.
He's another one. Like, will he take the throne back? I'm really interested to see what happens with Booker this season. Coming off the Olympic experience and, a not great year by his standards, and whether sometimes those guys play with all the great guys and you come out of the Olympics and you're just better. And I wonder if like a career year for him could be looming. So anyway, so you had Orlando, Indiana, and Cleveland.
Right.
And Cleveland has stability, which they did not have in the same way last year.
Complete stability. Like probably
Orlando got a
changed.
taste.
Yes. Yeah.
Indiana has a year with Siakam.
That's the big thing.
And some continuity for the most part. They didn't do anything crazy. So which one of those three do you like the most?
I find myself kind of leaning Indy, and I think it's sort of the combination. I agree with you that upside swing wise, Orlando is the most interesting. I think it's the combination of it could be Paolo or Franz who really makes a big leap at some point.
Yeah.
God forbid if both of them do, that would put you in a completely different tier. Plus, they have a lot of other interesting young players. Like, there's a lot to like there and plenty of room to think they could get better. They also offensively could be the kind of team that falls into, it's a very different case than the Kings because that was an offense first version of Sacramento. But as teams are getting more and more used to how the Magic play and the physicality of their defense and the limitations, I think most importantly on offense, is there a solve there? Is there more a way to run them aground? I think that's possible. I think Orlando's still going to be really good. Cleveland is probably the most stable baseline team, but I just don't see them getting a lot better unless you really think Evan Mobley is ready to take that step. Otherwise,
the coach piece could change it.
That could change it. But the team is kind of what it is.
Yeah.
There's a little lineup flexibility, and in the defense of their core guys, a lot of guys who can play multiple positions, which gives you some ability to toggle things around and make a rotation that makes like a little bit more cogent sense overall. But I think with Indy, it's the combination of the full season of Siakam, which is something we know. Like I feel like I have a good grasp of who Pascal Siakam is as a player, what he can do for that team, what getting a training camp with him coming in, knowing he's a part of everything will do for you.
Healthy Halliburton, who wasn't healthy really for 4 months.
Exactly. Healthy Tyrese Halliburton. And then you have the mix of what you don't know, which is, can Halliburton take that next step? What's next for Andrew Nembhard or Ben Shepherd? Are they going to get anything meaningful out of Jarris Walker?
Ben Shepherd reference. Wow. That was, stuck that in.
What am I here for?
That was
not to sneak in Ben Shepherd.
Stock on the Ben Shepherd Express.
I'm buying it. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, needless to say.
Well, off of what you said, I had a training camp storyline of this is one of my favorite because you went traditional with that, like those three. Let's monitor their training camp, see who's going to come out. One of my favorite early training camp storylines. Donovan Mitchell wanted to be in Cleveland all along.
Of course.
Come on, guys. This is where I always wanted to be. Then there was this article, I think, in the Cleveland Plain Dealer. Mitchell thought about other possibilities. It would have been a disservice not to at least consider them. But he said his mind was made up early in 2024, either January or February. And when given an opportunity to reinforce those words, he yanked an extension, blah, blah, blah. So his mind was made up either in January or February when two things happened. Brooklyn was an absolute dumpster fire. That was option one. And the Knicks were becoming the most popular team in the city with Jalen Brunson as a top 7 guy. And that option was out. Guess who was looking awesome? The Cleveland Cavaliers.
Yep.
I love training camp. I'm going to give you another one. Here's another just classic. It's D'Angelo Russell pretending he's not going to be shopped vigorously in 2 months season.
I missed this. What did he say?
I just got used to it, he said about trade rumors. Hopefully you'll know what you're going to get from me. This is definitely a new feel, new everything going on with destruction with JJ coming around and implementing what he's trying to do. It's changed the rhythm of things around here. My approach is just to stay steady. D'Angelo, I hope you're running.
Hopefully you know what you're going to get from me out of D'Angelo Russell's mouth. With all due respect, I do not. I do not.
D'Angelo, maybe don't start looking at hoops hype around early December when trade rumor season starts, because you're not going to be in the team in March. I'm sorry. Seem like a nice guy.
I appreciated Zach LaVine's approach to this too on media day, which was he kind of had this like big speech about, if you ever need to hear something about my take, you're going to hear it from me or my agent. We're going to be super straightforward with you. Also, whatever's in the past, I refuse to comment on it. We're not going to mention it ever again.
It never happened.
Absolutely not.
Do you hear me? What else do you have for training camp storylines?
This is where the asterisk comes back. I cannot stop worrying about the Bucks. I want to believe I am a Giannis guy. I think any team that has him on it is destined for a very hard floor. Like his effort level, his play, his dominance can absolutely take you so far. The fact that he said he and Dame did not have a chance to meet up at all this summer is both extremely understandable for a guy who played in the Olympics and also got married. I get it. It also does not make me feel any better about a team that does not seem able to have Chris Middleton to start the season, that already had like a work in progress feel as far as the chemistry of those guys, and hasn't done anything in the offseason to change the mix in a big way.
Right. They got 7th, 8th, and 9th men, and they kind of tossed away their draft pick on a 19-year-old. Yeah, I had as a subset of that, the Chris Middleton. Yeah, it's still, but it's going to be fine.
It's all going to be fine.
It's all going to be fine. It's October 1st, guys. Is he playing? Oh, he's not out there yet? This doesn't sound fine.
It's not great.
And also, he's old by NBA swingman standards. He has been really hurt every year since the 2021 finals, and I have real concerns that he's your shutdown guy against the Jason Tatums of the world.
As you should be. And this is the cross that I bear as someone who thinks Chris Middleton is very good, is the idea of him being injured and out of the lineup. To me, I'm like, this is a vital part of this team. And I am now freaked out by the depth chart when he's not out there. That's not where you want to be with Chris at this stage.
Now, and another training camp storyline is Dame. His head's right. Last year was the year from hell. A lot of personal stuff. Traded out of nowhere. Didn't work out before the year because he was afraid he was going to get hurt. And Giannis gets hurt in the playoffs. Everything that went wrong could go wrong. Coach changed. Terry Stotts. But now, had the summer. I worked out. I'm ready. I'm here. I'm ready to reclaim my throne. I don't know if it's true, but it sounded good. I had a cousin of this, speaking of old teams, and I agree with you, Milwaukee. And I'm probably more bullish on Milwaukee than most because I just think Giannis is going to be on just a psychotic tear this year.
He's always
We're
awesome.
going to be like, Giannis is psychotic. And I mean that in a positive way for the aggregators. Like
Positive
psychotically competitive, wanting to win, being a psycho about winning.
Gleefully psychotic.
Gleefully, competitively psychotic. Jimmy Butler didn't get an extension over the offseason, but it's fine.
Yep.
That's a good training camp storyline. It's fine. Didn't need the extension. It's fine.
I also have a cousin of this one, which is Jimmy Butler showed up without a perm, and actually it worked on me. I am buying serious Jimmy Butler showing up ready for business.
Yeah, he's not fucking around on photo day anymore.
Absolutely not fucking around. And I say this, yes, I realize I am a rube. I realize I am playing right into Jimmy's elaborate plot and probably like a big face coffee marketing scheme in some way. Like I know I'm being had. But also, Jimmy Butler taking the regular season seriously is a massive fucking deal if it happens for the Heat. Because that is not like, I know they can make the finals as a 7th seed, but you should not try to do that every year. You should actually try to win games and get into the middle of the East. And there's a reason I didn't even talk about them in that Orlando, Cleveland, Indiana mix. Is I don't entirely know that they deserve it, but also I feel myself buying back into what they're selling.
Well, and they also did the thing where they're like, we don't know what our roster is going to be in February, and we're not going to kill ourselves figuring it out now. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
Which I thought kind of the Knicks were doing, and then all of a sudden they're trading for Towns. But I think they looked around. They were probably intrigued by a bunch of different things. I'm sure they kicked the tires on marketing. I'm sure they kicked the tires on, at least had a meeting about Zach LaVine.
Sure.
Right? I'm sure they at least had a meeting about any guy making over $30 billion who was available, but ultimately they kept their flexibility. We'll see with Hero. I think, I don't know what the trade value, they kind of really needed him to be a trade value guy. And they almost were able to get him in a Dame deal and maybe got a little too aggressive with it. But they kind of need him to be really good this year, either for them or as a trade piece.
And that's kind of related to the Jimmy thing too. I think those are really the only guys, as far as upside goes, that can get Miami to like over the hump of mediocrity on offense. That's a team that's really struggled to create shots. Jimmy is a guy who can get to the line consistently, one of the only players on the team that can do that. He also has like the low-hanging fruit of the cuts and the fast breaks that can juice the numbers a little bit. Hero just has to be flat better than he's been.
Yeah.
I think Bam is kind of reaching who he can be and who he is as a player. I don't expect anything dramatically different from him, but they need something dramatically different from Tyler Hero.
So you're not going to write the Bam is expanding his offense in an effort to grow the Heat, but it's the same thing every year with Bam?
I was just going to do like a 3,000 word Haywood Highsmith feature, but if you want to vet that, we can talk about it.
Keep us posted. Joel Embiid, we mentioned him earlier. He was talking about how he lost weight, and he said, I still got a ways to go. Still want to lose some more. We got to do whatever it takes to make sure that in the postseason, I'm healthy. There's no agenda, no All-Star, no All-NBA. I'm just going to let that sit there for a second. So Joel is basically saying the postseason is now what matters. All right. Better late than never. He's 30 years old. But maybe he gets it. I don't know. What was your take?
This is where, you know what, my instinct is to say, maybe you should have cared about those things previously.
Oh, yeah. You think so, doctor?
Look, that's my instinct. I'm trying to grow. I'm trying to be a bigger person.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be positive. And I think what you're supposed to do is encourage positive behaviors when they happen around you, not point out, oh, you're the guy who shows up late all the time. I'm so glad you're here, Joel Embiid.
Right.
I'm so glad that you are here in this way, in this fashion. I genuinely hope that whatever body transformation you say you have had, it suits you and works well. And I hope this whole season goes brilliantly. We all would love to see Joel Embiid in an actual competitive high-level playoff series or just run start to finish. I think that's something that we're all waiting for. So for the sake of wanting to believe in the change, I'm here. I'm here for you, Joel. I'm believing. I'm choosing to buy into this.
I agree. I was on the record as I cannot take him seriously as the best guy on a team that wins 4 straight playoff rounds until he shows up for a season in shape and understands that it's a 9-month run. It seems like we've checked the first box. So congrats to him. We can skip over the training camp storyline of we want Brandon Ingram here in New Orleans, which I'm sure is going to be said by somebody over at some point, and it's going to be like a hostage video. JJ coaching LeBron and his son, ... This won't be weird at all. That's another storyline. No, it's going to be cool. It's not going to be a circus in any way, shape, or form.
What is your competitive history with your son? Do you play sports together against each other? Like, what is the dynamic between you?
He started playing tennis this year, and I was like, "You'll never beat me. I will have to like be in a wheelchair or using a walker for you to beat me." And he's like, "I will beat you by the time I'm 18." And he also thinks he when he was 10, he thought he could beat me in a fight. So I would say super competitive.
In a fight?
Yeah. He said UFC right now, he would tap me out in a minute. Yeah, it's competitive.
Wow.
So I don't know how that, with LeBron and his son, I don't know how that goes with that, but I would assume the son's just trying to take it to him at all times. Like that's what sons do with dads.
It's the best part about being a son.
Yeah.
Is lighting up your dad, throwing him under the bus, airing out
of him.
Absolutely. Airing out exactly how lame he is. I think the key here is that all of LeBron's like eccentricities are out there. You know, like how much is Bronny going to tell us or tell his teammates or tell anyone within their organization about, oh, here's this crazy thing my dad did. They're like, yeah, he put that on Instagram. I saw it. Like we all know about it.
My son would definitely do that to me. There's no question.
The whole situation is very strange. I think it will be aided only by the fact that Bronny is not in a position right now to threaten by merit to play NBA minutes. Will he play anyway? I guess we'll see. I suspect they're going to get out the let's put him on the floor together, have the moment kind of thing relatively early.
And put him in the G League, yeah.
So that the questions stop coming. It's going to get more awkward if Bronny is actually like a part of this thing in a real way, where whether he's shoehorned into that role, whether he lights it up in the G League or succeeds so much as a pressure defender, and the Lakers need exactly that. that's when it gets weird. I think they're almost helped right now by the fact that no one is really expecting that much of Bronny.
He's either 2 years away or 2 years away from being 2 years away. But I just don't see how he's going to play in a rotation for a team that's trying to make the playoffs. That seems inconceivable to me.
He does not appear to be that for a bunch of reasons. I think, honestly, even though the defense is kind of the strength right now, I think even that needs a ton of work, as it often does for rookie guards coming into the league.
Any more training camp storylines?
Honestly, those are the big ones for me.
Yeah, those are
anything,
big ones.
anything else dangling out there?
Celtics. It's all fine. The Tatum's head's in the right place, and then there's going to be some story in November about how he had to fix his shot and he couldn't remember how to shoot it anymore, and Drew Hanlon fixed it. That'll happen in like November.
Yeah,
hitching a shot.
How do you feel about the relative ironing out of the Zapruder footage of Jason Tatum's jumper?
You saw the hitch, right?
Oh, it was there.
Yeah, I was on a lot of text threads over the summer from how he shot in rookie year, sophomore year for the Celtics versus whatever that stop hitch thing he was doing in the Olympics. And I think he got rid of it. Sometimes it happens. It happens in tennis, throwing a baseball, golf. People, all of a sudden their swing gets fucked up. They don't know what happened. So I think that's what happened. We'll see if... honestly, Jaylen Brown shaving his beard was the biggest conversation piece for the Celtic fans in my life. Yeah.
It shook you up.
Because he had really grown it out. And then all of a sudden he went back to like 2019 Jaylen. So I was surprised by that.
What does that say about him, do you think? Like, where is he mentally that he's shaving the beard?
You know what that told me? My new girlfriend doesn't like my beard and it scratches her face and she asked me to shave it. Yeah, that's what it told me.
That's a spirit of compromise. We can support it.
Before we go, you wrote about Mutombo for The Ringer.
Yeah.
A really beloved on and off the court guy. And it was the case when he played. He was certainly like going to games in the 90s and the 2000s, somebody that just stood out on the court, which is pretty rare when you have a bunch of super tall guys. There's something different about how he carried himself. And his style was so unique where he was like this cross of, I don't know, like what Mark Eaton blocking shots in the 80s, but way better and way more athletic, but also had like a little bit of an offensive game. And it seemed conceivable in 2001. This was the one guy that might be able to slow down Shaq at his peak. And then Shaq just was like, no, not even this guy's stopping me. Didn't have as many playoff moments as I probably would have liked.
Yeah.
Went to Atlanta.
Some immortal ones, like the Denver one. If you're going to have a moment, that's the one you want.
I think the regret I have with his career was switching from Denver to Atlanta. I think it's just more fun if he stays in Denver, goes to Atlanta, whatever. It was just weird. I don't really have fond memories of those Atlanta teams. But what happened to him with Houston when Darryl latched onto him and he's part of like that 22 game winning streak team, and he became one of these early advanced metrics guys where people are like, hey, when Mutombo's in, all of these good things happen, even if like he barely shoots. Anyway, he lasts 2 decades and then has just an incredible impact in the league itself and was just beloved. When you were writing about it, what were the things that jumped out to you?
I mean, for one, I think the fact that he was a 4-time Defensive Player of the Year winner who was left off the NBA 75 team, I don't feel great about. And I think plus if you zoom out in like, how do we tell the story of basketball history in these modern eras? I think Dikembe Mutombo is a big part of it. I think the finger wag iconography is such a huge thing. Yeah. I think the fact that he was a part of a lot of, if not highly successful, winning and very memorable teams, that kind of stuff does matter. And ultimately, I think what you're alluding to with like the on-off stuff and like what those kinds of numbers capture with a player like him is he's intimidating as hell. Even when he was like pushing 40. Guys were afraid to challenge him because he was such a successful shot blocker, because he was going to let you know all about it afterwards. And I think that the contrast of warm and fuzzy, like big laughing Dikembe Mutombo, who is just like one of, I think, the foremost like charitable forces that the modern NBA has seen in terms of the work he's done around the world and in Africa specifically, contrasted with like, this guy's also like an asshole who's laughing in your face on the court.
Right.
Those are the sorts of contrasts that always endear a player to me. And I think with Mutombo, there's just so much to like. And there's so many stages of his career and his life you could latch onto and say, like, for you, it's not the Hawks. There's someone out there for whom they see that when they think of Mutombo, they think of him with that broad picture of the Hawk across the front of the jersey.
Right.
And I love that he can mean so many different things to so many different people.
Well, there was also three other pieces with him. The voice, which everyone imitated, which was just one of the iconic sports voices. Everyone did it. Then the subset of that was the Inside the NBA guys. They just loved him.
Oh, yeah.
Barkley had so much joy. They would always get so much Mutombo material. But from an unintentional comedy standpoint, in a good way, I felt like he was the pioneer of the slam dunk contest reactions.
Oh, yeah.
He was the first one when they would cut to and whatever his reaction was always the best one. And then I felt like for the next 20 years, it was everybody doing a Mutombo reaction, but his were completely genuine. He had a million of them. And it really became one of the funniest parts of the slam dunk contest was him going nuts, him holding his head, him with his thing, him turning around in complete disbelief. And I don't know. He just, there's not many guys who had a higher approval rating than him. There's nobody who was like, fuck Mutombo. Like everybody loved that guy. And then after he retired, was a really important NBA guy behind the scenes. I think really beloved and had a huge impact and did so much charitable stuff. And everybody really liked him.
I think it says a lot that even the guys of his era who he had like ostensible rivalries with or was blocking or they were trying to dunk on him, it was just like a running bit. Like there's the legendary clip of him bragging to Jordan that he'd never dunked on him before and Jordan getting him and finger wagging in his face. And there's similar things, as you said, with Mutombo and Shaq, like with all of these greats of his era, he was like a counterpoint at some point in their careers and some point. And one of the fun things writing the obit was figuring out like all the players that he had blocked over the course of his career. And when you play as long as he has, it is like you've blocked Jordan and LeBron up until Chris Paul, up until some guys who were drafted even a little later than that, who are current or will be all-time great players. And he's blocked all those guys.
Yeah, I remember when I was trying to do my book, I didn't have him in the pyramid and he came close, but I just didn't have him. And it came down to the All-NBA stuff and the lack of really only being on that one finals team, which he got traded into halfway during the season. With that said, they just had bad luck that year because they go against the 0-1 Lakers, who were one of the 4 or 5 greatest playoff teams of all time. I think if they had caught the 0-2 Lakers, they might have actually been able to steal a series from them. But 0-1, nobody was beating that team. And they got one game off them in overtime. But it's just that Kobe and Shaq together that year was just unstoppable. So that was his one chance, and then it didn't happen. Anyway.
And even then, like the interviews with him after the fact, seemed like he felt pretty good about how they did. You know, it's not like he's hanging his head. It's like you ran into what was kind of an unstoppable juggernaut. You stole a game. You like acclimated yourself well. You can go home and be proud with what you did at the end of the day. I think Mutombo has always been one of these guys who has had very clear perspective on what matters. And what matters to him is competing and playing hard and embarrassing these guys. It's also like you got to live a full, rich life and benefit your community and the people around you. And he's always been great about that.
All right, check out that piece that Rob wrote on theringer.com, and you can hear Rob on the Ringer NBA show and on the Prestige TV podcast breaking down Slow Horses with Karl-Anthony Towns, season 5. We'll see how that goes. Good to see you, Rob.
Thanks, Bill.